Weird West takes place in the West, but not quite the American West. Released in 2022, it's an RPG hybridized with a twin-stick shooter. I'm gonna say something right at the top. I am not good at twin-stick shooters. You'll see some absolutely sour maneuvers in my footage. But that's okay. If you don't do things you're bad at, you'll miss a lot of living. Weird West has a heavier RPG focus than The Ascent, which came out the year before, and takes more from early CRPGs like Fallout. It has some immersive sim qualities, but it's hard to neatly quantify. I'd classify it as one of those experimental indie games and just leave it there. It's on PlayStation Premium now, and has been on Game Pass for a while, so there's a lot of opportunity to try it cheap. Weird West is the debut game of Wolf Eye Studios, founded by the former creative director and an executive producer from Arcane Studios. It's a strong showing for a launch game, so let's get into it. The game begins with a cutscene of a hooded, spooky cult arrayed around a spooky, hooded figure and 5 paintings. A symbol appears on one of the paintings, and then the player transfers consciousness to the woman in the painting, a bounty hunter named Jane Bell. She rousts to the screaming of her son as he's shot dead, and before she can get her pistols on, raiders have kidnapped her husband to sell on the live meat market. There are 5 paintings and 5 sequences in the game, and each is essentially a contained episode where the player inhabits a new character on the worst day of their life. As Jane Bell, our goal is to track down and rescue our husband from the gang that kidnapped him. After her, we awake as an amnesiac pigman trying to discover who he was, then a fire tribe guardian hunting an ancient spirit of greed. We've got a religious werewolf engaged in a holy war against a coven of witches, and last, one of the witches, trying to prevent her apocalyptic visions. A subtle note, the player is not truly becoming the character, they're essentially inhabiting the person's body and temporarily erasing their mind. It's a possession. The characters around them may already know the possessed, some already have relationships with them. You can either feign ignorance or outright tell them you don't know who they are. The choice is on you. After your brand moves on to another character, you can go back and recruit them as a companion, where they'll revert to their actual personality. Choice was clearly at the forefront of the design process here. Almost every character can be killed, even plot-centric ones. Most missions have redundant completion paths, most often a key or a note placed somewhere on premises, or a secondary character to advance the same objective. And often you can betray the quest givers as well. Other RPG elements come in the form of an overworld map similar to Fallout, with random encounters sprinkled as the player travels. These are, on the whole, not nearly as creative or interesting as Fallout's. There are precious few unique encounters, mostly with a recurring witch named Heathen who easily tags you as a possessed body. The majority of encounters are just bandits demanding 350, or a pack of wolves. There's also an interesting perk system with 2 types of collectibles that can be found through exploration. The Golden Aces, which unlock flat bonuses across all characters, and the Nymph Relics, which unlock cooldown abilities for combat. I really liked this system, as it felt like a genuine and immediate reward for exploration, and encouraged a lot of deep snooping through areas. We've got a limited space inventory, but it can be expanded by purchasing a horse, a bank vault, or just recruiting a posse and rifling through their pockets. The character is locked in with 5 weapon types, as well as throwables such as dynamite. There are only 2 or 3 variants of each weapon, generally one focused on speed and ammo capacity, and a slower, heavier hitting variant. Weapons are upgradable at blacksmiths in a rudimentary World of Warcraft item quality system. This game also involves a ton of looting. Since there are so many little notes and keys and ammo is scarce, you'll be spending a few minutes after each firefight just checking pockets. Maybe I'm getting old, but looting a single dollar off 700 dead pigmen is no longer a compelling gameplay mechanic to me. Action plays out in twin-stick shooter fashion. Each character has a unique set of character abilities as well as a shared pool of weapon abilities. There are some combat modifiers, fire, poison, lightning, bleeding, and an abundance of environmental hazards that can complicate a simple firefight. Someone might knock over a lamp, setting the whole prairie ablaze, or you might shoot a box of bullets, causing it to cook off. There's also plenty of stealth options, and the player is encouraged to sneak around and set up ambushes or break into well-defended complexes through windows and chimneys to steal what they need. Again, it's a system designed with choice in mind, but it runs into the same problem most immersive sims do. All of the options are not equally compelling. Setting up ambushes with barrels rarely does enough damage to eliminate all threats, unless an excessive amount of prep time is taken. But sneaking up and stealth killing every enemy on the map, then dragging them into tall grass, is usually quick and painless. There are some larger enemies that can't be stealth killed, but with a stick of cluster dynamite, you can kill almost any enemy in the game with a simple toss and a volley from the big iron at your hip. The actual gunplay includes a cover system of crouching behind low obstacles, and the most often used ability of my career, the Action Hero Dive. It speeds your shots and reloads up, looks cool, and everybody can do it. It's also the main way to evade ground effects and incoming abilities. We've also got a dedicated kick button, used mostly for launching explosive barrels into rooms, or fully stun-locking single targets when out of ammo. Then there are the cooldown abilities, which range in effectiveness greatly depending on your playstyle. I really enjoyed the Pigman's close range abilities, a charging attack, ground stomp, and poison cloud. They had nice synergy with the shotgun. Unfortunately, the melee weapons are pretty janky. Enemies will hover just out of range of the weapons and behave erratically at close range, making them hard to target. Even the werewolf character runs into this issue and is better off entering engagements in human form with a long rifle. Gunfights are always very quick, one way or another, and I found myself stumbling over the controls quite a bit. You have to switch between a firing and idle stance, and each stance has separate action abilities accessible. With how hectic the combat is, it's incredibly easy to enter the wrong stance and earn a quick game over. There are a lot of tactical options here, but combat is so fast-paced and the controls are complicated enough that it tends to force a reversion to the safest tactic. Weird West builds its setting very slowly. At first, it seems like it's grounded in the American West, but with werewolves and man-eating mermaids and such. But as the game progresses, this seems less and less accurate. There aren't any familiar place names. As far as I can recall, nobody even says America, and the churches are decidedly not Bible worshippers. Flavor text frequently talks about the old home and the many lost languages and peoples who used to live there, all in the past tense. The phrasing of some of these notes seems to point towards the old home being unreachable or destroyed. Characters use flood as a replacement for dam in the setting, so maybe the old home god Atlantis. There are also UFOs occasionally seen on screen or crashed, and the presence of ancient magic ruins under the West seems to point towards some sort of progenitor race. I couldn't quite shake the feeling that maybe it was a different planet given all the sci-fi elements, but ultimately the setting seems to be a sort of unspecified fantasy Wild West. I'll pause here with a spoiler warning. It becomes evident fairly quickly that the player is actually controlling the mysterious seated hooded cultist in the opening scene, as he possesses these Westerners through their portraits. As we complete the various missions, we conclude with wrap-up screens indicating our decisions in each section, how many people we killed, whether we helped or harmed the inhabitants of the world, and so on. There are a few characters known as the 21 who are immortal and appear across multiple sections, but there is remarkably little overlap in the normal characters as we body hop. The only human who plays across the storylines is Essex Mass, a man who saw his brother gunned down and vowed to usurp immortality from one of the 21, a being named Aleph. After I finished the bounty hunter section, I was expecting the plot was going to be a loose rephrasing of the Andy Weir short story, The Egg. We'd play through the bounty hunter story, then tag in with someone she wronged to see what effect she had, and so on. I was excited to see how their paths would intersect, but this didn't really happen. The branded player characters do not have any unique interaction with each other at all in the story. You can recruit them as companions, but they don't have much or any additional input on quests or storylines. They function identically to the generic NPC bodyguards you'd recruit, except you feel a little worse if they die. As such, the narrative feels somewhat disemboweled. There's no core to this story, just 5 standalone shorts with varying themes in a loose wrapping. Ultimately, each character accomplishes their goals with only a few minor hiccups depending on player choice. Each story culminates with a large decision. Do you take vengeance on the monster that kidnapped your husband, or just rescue him and get out of there? The Pigman's choice is probably the most interesting. In his story, we learn that the entire race of pigmen is being created by a lone witch, who is grafting pig heads onto the bodies of presumably evil men, robbing them of their wits and forcing them to become mute monsters. At the pivotal moment, we can decide to either restore the speech and intelligence of these mutilated people, or scatter their souls to the wind, keeping them as monsters. It's an interesting choice with a lot of consequences in either direction.
Now the rest of the pigmen have got their souls back. The question is, will y'all do right? It'll take a lifetime to show the world y'all ain't monsters. Best get to proving it.
The final boss of this game is a talk therapy session. The final character, the cultist in the Jeb Bush pose, tracks the 21 down to a room beneath a cabin, and it's all clearly spelled out. 4,000 years ago, the 21 found a wish-granting tome and used it to gain immortality. But the price of immortality was humanity. The 21 don't feel any emotions or human drives except for a longing for non-existence. The tome refuses to make them mortal again, so they've decided to wish for an end to the universe, using the last wish. But they decide to try one other strategy before intergalactic genocide, an experiment in body snatching. It's revealed that the player has been controlling Aleph as he possessed the 5 bodies. The other 20 immortals grill you on your decisions during the game to see if Aleph was able to regain any emotion or humanity. You're given the option to respond kindly, cruelly, or apathetically. If you respond apathetically, the experiment fails and the universe is destroyed to grant the immortals relief. If you respond with either goodwill or hatred towards the people of the West, it's enough to restore Aleph's humanity and end his curse. The other immortals drink his blood, and through it, the years catch up and they all dissolve to dust. It's a fairly unique narrative, and struck me as an examination of gaming as a whole. In a lot of ways, the player is Aleph, entering another life at its moment of greatest tension, and then discarding it once the mission is through, all to gain some personal insight or excitement from the experience. I didn't correctly guess the course of the story at the start. Maybe that's why I liked it so much. Weird West is a fine game. The gunplay has attractive basics, but becomes overly complicated depending on playstyle. The majority of the add-on abilities and environmental features are less effective than just shooting the hell out of everything or going for stealth kills. But these are both still fun options. As an RPG, it is well written, but the plotlines occasionally stumble depending on player choice, and it lacks cohesiveness across the entire runtime. The interactivity of environments is really surprising and compelling, but there are some frustrating pieces like scavenging 1 or 2 bullets off of every individual corpse. The storylines vary in quality between the characters, with the Pigman being a standout favorite, and the werewolf and cultist plotlines being somewhat forgettable. The mixing of random chance and breadth of player choices seems like it could drastically change the game experience across playthroughs, but overall I had a positive experience. On the pain scale, Weird West hurt me a little more. The gunplay through highly reactive environments was fun, and the story took enough big swings to keep me interested in what would happen next. I'd recommend it to anyone who likes creative exploration, but I wouldn't exactly call this a must-play game. Well, that's my 7th review. Thanks for tuning in. See ya!